Welcome to another episode of Profiles in Leadership. I'm your host, Steve Anderson, and today our guest is Chris Dyer. He is a recognized company culture and remote work expert. As a former CEO managing thousands of people, his companies consistently were named a best places to work. They have also been named a fastest growing company by Inc. magazine 5 times. Chris routinely consults and speaks, and Inc. magazine ranked him as the #1 leadership speaker on culture. He has also 3 best-selling books: The Power of Company Culture and Remote Work, a top 50 voice in leadership, a top 400 change management guru, a top 50 global thought leader, and a top 50 leadership podcast. Top 50 HR leaders shaping the future of work, and a top 101 global employee engagement and experience influencers by inspiring workplaces and work buzz just this year. As a keynote speaker, his goal is to inspire audiences with a straightforward delivery, insightful candor, and engaging humor. His talks leave audiences permanently transformed, offering innovative perspectives on leadership to improve company culture and empower organizations to discover new successes. Countless companies have unlocked productivity, performance, and profits by implementing his 7-pillar strategy. So, Chris, welcome to the program. It's great to have you on today.
Thanks so much for having me.
So, give us a little context, kind of, where you grew up and kind of how you got interested in the business world, a little bit about that journey and where you are today.
Well, it was not really a straight line. My grandfather and uncle and lots of people in my lives, my grandmother, were all entrepreneurs. So my grandfather and uncle had machine shops and different businesses around the world, and my grandmother on my dad's side now was had the very first beauty salon in the Disneyland Hotel. So I'm in Orange County in California. Disney is a kind of a part of our, whether you like it or not, you are a Disney person because Disney is such a major part of the area. But we had a really special connection because my grandma, had that little business going inside the hotel there and lived just a little bit of ways away. And we, anytime my parents wanted to go out on a date or had to work late, we got to go stay the night at grandma's house and see the fireworks.
Nice.
So I was always very entrepreneurial and I didn't know that that was a thing. I just knew that I wanted to win every contest, sell the most wrapping paper, the most candy, the most magazines at school for all those different things. And if I wanted money, I would just go and ask people to do chores or pick weeds or wash their car. And like I figured out how to get what I wanted by going and earning the money. And later on in life, I realized that means I'm an entrepreneur, right? I mean, so um, and so I really thought that was the direction I was going to go. And then I went to college at Cal State Fullerton and went to my business classes and absolutely hated them.
Okay.
I could not believe how boring and lifeless and divulge of any interesting things, any stories. It was just all like sitting in spreadsheets and equilibriums and it was all theory. And here I had lived my whole life like watching real life business happen. And I just didn't connect to it. And so I also didn't really know how to study. That was another side issue, like of just being smart enough to study 5 minutes before the test in high school. That works to get A's and B's. You go to college, it does not work. And I just happened to take a criminal justice course. And criminal justice at Cal State Fullerton is very sociology based. In fact, it's more of a sociology degree than anything else. And in fact, that's what my degree is in, but it was like a focus in criminal justice. And I loved it. And so I went into that and thought, well, guess I'm going to go be a cop now. And I didn't really want to do that. And so I ended up in the business of background checks and working for someone else who I adamantly did not like. He was one of the worst bosses I've ever had in my entire life.
Gotcha.
And after 9/11, I was like, oh, I was supposed to be an entrepreneur. I was supposed to be a business owner. I was supposed to do my own thing. That big event really shook me and to kind of get me to stop being playing it safe and working for someone I didn't like because I made good money and had a car and had a mortgage and all of that kind of stuff. And so I went by November 1st, started my company and never looked back and finally figured out how to be an entrepreneur again.
Yeah, yeah, that's amazing. So now you've started your own companies, you've been a CEO, you've run companies. how do people or how do you create an environment where you get the best places to work accolade?
Yeah, so I think often it's taken me a while to kind of figure this out. But one of the things or one of the mistakes that leaders make is that we think we're trying to get people to happy or that we're trying to get them to like their job. We're trying to get them to some level of good or happy, whatever that word is. And what got us to being one of the best places to work like 15 years in a row was not that. It was actually trying to create the best place that that employee will ever work in their entire career. And so there's a difference, right?
Okay, yeah.
If we think about like our different experiences with different companies in the world, like how you might experience Louis Vuitton is going to be very different than how you experience Coach or how you experience, I don't know, buying a bag off the street that you don't know if it's even legal or not. Like there's a different level of experience. And so we made the decision that it was going to be this is the best place you're ever going to work. And we hope you don't leave, but if you do, you're going to regret it for the rest of your life because it's never going to be this good ever again. And that's the high level bar that we set.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. And I know that doing a little research for this, you said that you've been said that you're a culture guy. And are you familiar with a CEO group called Vistage?
Of course, yeah.
Of course. So I was in Vistage for quite a few years, and it was great. And I that resonated with me, you being called the culture guy, because that was what they called me. Well, let's see what the culture guy has to say, because a lot of those guys got there by leaving a lot of dead bodies along the roadside, and
Yeah.
so they would come up, well, just do this and just fire them, or just tell them to do it this way, And I'd always say, well, there's probably a better way to do that, and so I got the nickname culture guy too. So. Um, I hopefully share that proudly with you as being a culture guy.
I love it. There's room for both of us. I love it.
Yeah, that's great. So, being a culture guy, how can you maintain the company culture, that you strive for with, so many different work settings now, a lot of remote workers, things like that. How do you maintain that? How do you keep it going year after year after year?
Yeah, so it's a matter of if we kind of look at this in parts, you got to be very clear about who you are and what your culture is and what it is not. And if you're listening to this podcast and you're the CEO, well, then you have a very different view of this. But if you're like, listen, I'm a middle manager, I got 5 people report to me, I'm not in charge of the larger culture. Well, you are at least in charge of the culture of your team. And so you can make those decisions about what are the norms, how do we get things done, what does good culture look like, how do we operate with each other. It could be as simple as creating a team charter, right? Like, what are our responsibilities to each other? How do we show up for each other? Is it cool to call you at 6 p.m. if I have a question? Or is it like, hey, we're going to respect really strict boundaries of 9 to 5, and unless it's an emergency, we're not going to bug anybody? Like, those are all like totally different answers based on different teams, different companies, different work strategies. And so figuring out like who you are, and then that's really been what a lot of my books have been about, is trying to help you design that. So my last book, The Power of Company Culture, I give you the 7 pillars, and I'm really trying to help people design that thing. So knowing what the thing is, who we are and who we are not, is very important. How Jeff Bezos runs his company is very different than Google. It's very different than Zuckerberg. It's very different than Uber. It's very different than Nordstrom's. But they all are very good at those 7 things in their own way. Then you need to be able to figure out how do you go in and create things, moments, and experiences and repeatable opportunities for people to express that culture and to do those things the way in which you envision that they will do it. Not exactly in a micromanaged way, but like in a flow way that we're all rowing the boat in the same way. And then last but not least, then you need to get like hyper focused or hyper curious about where in your organization things are not working, where you feel like you could be doing better, where there is some magic for you to go and figure out how to do it better. And I think that was what my job title shifted over time from CEO to like, um, you know, chief experimenting orchestrator, like something like that. Like of like I was the person orchestrating all these experiments inside the organization all the time, not the person who was just in charge of the other executives. And so again, it's like figure out who you are, make sure that there are things happening in the company every day that reinforce that, how you meet, how you operate, your team charters, like all of that. And then how do you go and find those little things in the organization on an ongoing basis, to your point, how do you keep it going? Because ultimately, like 1 year sales would suck, and the next year customer service would suck, and the next year, like we had a problem with in accounting and billing, and like there was always a place for me to go and like try to figure out how to make things better. And I think that's what helped us continue that process.
And how do you get that message throughout the entire organization? Do you have leadership development programs? Do you have get-togethers where you discuss this? Do you send out, memos or emails or something to reinforce that? How do you make sure that that's consistent throughout the company?
Every single time someone was hired, they had to come in that first week. I tried to do it on day one. That wasn't always possible, but in that first week of them working, they were on a call with me and sometimes other people who had just been hired. And I, as the CEO, ran them through a 30-minute culture presentation. This is who we are. And if you ever feel like this is not the message you're getting, if you feel like you're being asked to do things that are totally counter to what I'm telling you right now, here is my personal cell phone. Here is, my email. It is, I need your help to tell me if you're not getting this message because this is the most important thing we do. So day one or near day one as a CEO, I'm telling every employee, this is how we work, right? I did not leave it up to that telephone game of I'm going to tell my senior people and they're going to tell their VPs and they're going to tell their directors and they're going to tell their frontline managers. Like I didn't allow it to permeate down that line because it gets lost,
Mhm.
right? So they met with me and I told them, and they would tell me at times, like, hey, I don't feel like what you said is what's happening here. Okay, cool. Let's go figure that out. Right? Where's the disconnection? I did a question, one question survey every single week. So I asked every employee one question. I got rid of the annual survey because I think those are stupid and dumb and they don't work. And so instead, we shifted it to one question every week. Now, we probably asked 47, 48 questions a year. There were some weeks we took off. But imagine if I'm asking you one question and that's it. Your job as an employee is just to answer this one question this one time. You're probably going to do it. And if when I come back to you, so I asked the question on Wednesday, and by the following Tuesday, I've come back to everyone and said, this is what I heard. This is what we're going to do about it. And then on a monthly call we have with the whole company, all hands call that we did virtually, I tell everyone at part of my speech, my little 5-minute speech to the company is these were the 4 or 5 questions we asked this month. This is what I heard. This is what we're doing with it. This is the updates. And so almost my whole entire thing was I heard you and here's what we're doing. That was what I spent my time on,
When you
right?
look back over that time, then when there's a general question, but I'm sure you saw trends. What do people mostly want to tell you, and what are you hearing from employees in the company? What is a common thing that you're hearing?
Well, I mean, it was a little directed by what I asked. So sometimes I would ask things like, who in the company is killing it for us that we haven't recognized, or we don't realize is a real superstar? That's a fun, great question. When you want to tell someone that, like, someone on your team is like awesome. I might have also, this here's a really interesting one. I asked one time, what resource do you really wish you had? Like, what don't you have to get your job done? And consequently, just a month prior to that, I was in a seniors meeting with my team, and I was asking them, like, why is the operations team struggling? They got a new person a year ago. We've noticed this steady decline as we've added more people. Our productivity really hasn't gotten any better. In fact, it's gotten a little worse. Excuse me. And we couldn't figure out what was going on with them. They weren't as productive as we thought they would be. Was it the leader? Was it them? Well, I asked this one question. What resource do you had? And Everyone on that team, almost everyone on that team said the exact same thing. We really wish we had a second monitor. It
Second
was,
monitor, as in computer monitor?
yeah, a second computer monitor.
Okay.
And I'm like, what do you mean you wish you had a second monitor? Everyone gets a second monitor. Well, somehow when we hired the new leader of that team, there was a miscommunication in training, and we didn't tell that, or they didn't understand or didn't hear that it was their job when they hired someone new to send them a monitor to make sure that that got done. Everyone gets a laptop. They get to pick their laptop. They get like a range of what they can buy. They pick the one they want, and then we send them a monitor. We've got a standard one we ship out on Amazon. It didn't happen. And so here you have, as we keep adding more people, we have more and more people with 550 tabs open on a tiny little 17-inch screen. And everyone else in the company's got 2 and 3 monitors to do their job. So immediately we got them all these monitors, $100 fix for like 50 people. And guess what? Productivity shoots up within a month because they can actually like see, they can move their tabs, they can do multiple things, they can put a query over here, come back, work over here. They're way more productive. I just asked the question,
Yeah.
right? I didn't do anything heroic. I didn't like come in, but I could have fired their boss. I could have fired them. I could have laid off a whole team, hired new people. It was just, it was our fault. We screwed up, right? But we didn't, we had to be curious about what was happening with people. So it was always a little something different. But as they, again, as they saw that we actually did something with it, they were far more willing to share and to go deep and to really give us their true thoughts about what was happening because they could see that we cared and that this was something we were going to take action on.
The power of asking questions.
Yeah.
Teach it all the time, and sometimes it's what you don't anticipate. That's why you ask the questions, because you don't see it or you don't feel it. And you just have to ask people, what is it that they need? So tell us a little bit about what you're doing now. So I know that you said you started a company, you've been the CEO a couple times. Are you CEO running a company now? Or are you just doing keynote speeches? Are you coaching? What does your day-to-day look like today?
It's pretty schizophrenic.
Okay.
So I have 2 startups that I'm playing around with, having a lot of fun with. One is called Hope Tape. We help bring a fully compostable tape to vineyards and bags in stores and all of that, so that this plastic is actually made from plants. So it'll totally fully biodegrade. It doesn't go into landfills or into your wine. So this would be interesting since you're a wine guy. This is actually replaces those ugly green ties that leach all this like terrible plastic into the soil. So we're replacing that. I have another AI startup that we just literally launched yesterday to create a unified inbox for businesses for all of their social media accounts. So I do a lot in AI. I've been advising AI long before ChatGPT came around. And then when I'm not doing that stuff, I probably give 4 or 5 keynotes a month around the country on culture, on change has really been hot lately. That helping organizations really thriving through relentless change has been something that I've been speaking a lot about, as well as future of work and AI. There's still a big hunger for that. So spend a lot of my time doing that. And I still do a little consulting, but that's not really, it better be something really special for me to say yes to a consulting gig because I like my projects and I really like going out and being able to speak to groups and conferences. I find a lot of joy in that.
So are you an idea guy? Are you the guy that comes up with this idea for these ties in vineyards, or is that something that someone else comes up with and they go reach out to you because you know how to build a company?
So my natural talent is ideation. And if anyone hasn't done the Gallup Strengths Finders, ideation is basically if you throw 100 ideas at me, I'm good at saying, well, these 1 or 2 are really, these are good. Like
Hmm.
I can help you discern through 100 ideas. So sometimes I'm the idea guy, and sometimes I'm the person who takes the idea and is able to help it bloom and really figure out how do we make this work. So there have been times in my career where I was the idea guy. With these two particular, I'm have co-founders who it was their initial idea and they really needed help helping this bloom right into something. How do we turn this idea into a working product? So I'm good in like that phase 1 or phase 2, I would call, of a project. I'm
Mhm.
not the phase like 4 or 5 of like putting in, repeatable processes and, you know, finishing off the thing, invoices and contracts and like that's not me. I'm definitely in the idea, either the origination or the sort of growing of that idea. That's where I sit.
Your story in college, I think, is so common with entrepreneurs. A lot of great entrepreneurs that we know about today couldn't make it through college. That, as you said, they got bored. It was just something that wasn't, they weren't excited about it. So sounds like you fall into that category where it's just, don't kill me with processes and systems.
Yeah.
Give me a great idea and let me run with it.
Right. And as what I just said, like I'm not good at the end process stuff, but that's
Yeah.
exactly what business school is teaching them is how do you do that stuff? And they kind of just don't, I mean, they do a better job now than when I was in school, but like it wasn't about the entrepreneurial journey. It wasn't about the idea or coming up with that or building a team or sales and marketing. It was all, accounting and econ and it was just, I don't know. For me, it was a struggle. I definitely have seen people with better examples. Those who've graduated more recently, has been a big shift to more of that, but that's just not me. So I spent my time studying why do people do what they do, which was fascinating, so I could have a better understanding of how to make ideas work, as because I understand how people work and what's going to get them to say yes or get them to change their behaviors or get them to try something new.
When you admit that you don't do that, then you need that for a successful business. So you go hire somebody to do that. You find other people that are good at those things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's why I love, having a company certainly gave me this. Having methodologies like Scrum and Agile were great for this. Like, how do you get different people together and figure out where everyone's strong? And it's funny because I would ask people where they wanted to be on the process, and they would tell me it would give them absolute anxiety and they would quit their job if their job was to come up with ideas or to help figure out how to make the idea happen. Like their happiness sat on, once you guys have figured out what you wanted, I'll go drive the car now. Like I'll make the repeatable processes happen. I'll do that. That makes me happy. Whereas if I was in that role, that would make me insane. Like I would hate that to be doing the same job over and over again in repeatable processes. So
Mhm.
it's always about finding where everyone's talents really lie, what makes them happy, what things do they really align to, and then and this is a great lesson for any leader out there. Like, are you constantly testing this? Are you making sure that your people are in the right seats and that they are doing the right tasks that really align with who they are? Because I have a lot of people who used to raise their hand, would volunteer for everything, and then end up doing stuff they hated just because they were highly motivated, they really wanted to do a great job. They wanted the company to succeed. And 6 months later, they're doing a bunch of stuff they hate. So it's our job to make sure people continue to stay in that alignment and that flow of what makes them happy and what makes them successful. So we keep our best people and the company's successful.
You bring up a great point. I learned this early in my career that you don't ever ask for volunteers on a project that you want to be done well, because often the person who volunteers is not the person that should take it. So, as a leader, you should identify who's good, who's got the strengths, what their superpower is, and then ask them to do it as opposed to just letting someone volunteer to do it.
Yeah, and if you're not sure, then at least identifying that roadmap of like what are the different parts of this project, and then you're asking for volunteers into those different parts. So if they do want to volunteer because they're kind of that person, but they're like, I want to volunteer to finish the project, not to start the project. You're right, because you get people who mean well or who want to get ahead or want to get a promotion or a raise, and they'll raise their hand for everything, and like they're not the right person. Absolutely.
In the bio, we read off all these accolades that you've had, the 50 best this, the 40 best this, the 50 best this. How do you get recognized for that? Is it a marketing strategy that you try and go after those type of awards or get recognized for that? Or are you just that good that people just see that?
I'm sure that back in the day, when I ran my larger organization, there was probably a lot of marketing and PR stuff that, who knows, you get onto some lists. But
Mhm.
certainly since I've sold my organization, a lot of the ones that you've read, I've just been very blessed that, the work that I'm doing and that people have noticed, and I'm on different things and put me on lists. I think it's one of those like self-perpetuating things where you get on a few lists and then people go to make their own list and then look at someone else's list and then they pull from that, right? So, yeah.
So when you give your keynote speeches at conferences, I would assume, and business meetings, things like that, what are you trying to say? You've only got, what, 45 minutes to motivate these people, inspire these people, make them think that giving this great message. What is that message? Is it the same or does it change?
It definitely changes by the organization, what the focus is. So, I was speaking to a room full of CEOs the other day. And so my message to them was very different and a little harsh at times of me trying to push them to go and be the best possible CEO they can be. But then, a week before that, I'm in a room full of 400 travel advisors. And so what we're really talking about was how to help them do their work in the best possible way that's going to keep them from burning out and keep them from overdoing it, and it's going to allow them to be successful over the long period of time. And so that's a very different message, right? I'm trying to help a group of people do their best work ever. And over here, I'm telling CEOs, falls on you and you're probably not doing enough. Right? So that's a pretty different message. Maybe some of the tools and some of the things are similar. I'll certainly tell you that one of the big concepts that I've been talking to people about lately in a lot of my keynotes is this idea of how do you shrink the loop? And with AI and with all of the changes happening and all of the political and economic, sort of uncertainties and upheavals and all of this stuff that's going on right now, wherever you sit on the aisle, like there's a lot of unknown and confusion and change and all of that happening. And what's important for leaders to do is to help their people go from, hey, we have an idea to we're doing the idea. Hey, we have a problem. I need a decision. How do I get you that decision? And there's a loop, and that's a cultural thing. That's a norm. And what I find is that the loops went from this to this lately, meaning it's taking so much longer to get started, to finish, to get answers, to get decisions. And so, how do we help people make these smaller loops? How do we get them what they need or empower them to make decisions themselves to get this done faster? And when we do that, people are happier and the work moves faster. We meet our goals, we're more productive, we have higher performance, we have higher productivity. All of that is better because people are spending way too much time doing two tasks. The two biggest tasks for like the average white collar worker is meetings and email. That is insane. Their two biggest activities should be doing work, doing the things to get things done. And instead, they're spending all of their times in meetings, talking about stuff and making sure it's okay and doing cover my butt and making sure that I'll let my boss make the decision, or they're sending emails about the meetings that they had. So we realized in my last organization, we had to clear away as many meetings as possible, give people authority to make decisions, stand by them even if they made the wrong decision, and help retrain them, help them learn from that so they can make better decisions next time. So they spent most of their time doing and not talking about doing something. And that's only gotten worse lately. So that's been a big theme lately.
So you're an idea guy, you're a visionary guy. What does the future of work look like? You explained a little bit about your theory of what should be done, but with remote workers and some people in the office, not always in the office, how do you get together and communicate and bond and do all those things? What does future look like in the next, or what does work look like in the future, say in the next 5 to 7 years?
In the next 5 to 7 years, we're going to see probably a pretty big shift where there's going to be some major disruption that some companies who we look at today and say, wow, they'll always be here, right? We're going to have one or two examples that are going to suddenly become Nokia, Blockbuster, Kodak, like whatever the example you want to give. We're going to have a few of those, and that's going to be pretty disruptive. We're going to have a really big problem in this next 5 years of the frontline work is going to be replaced by AI. And we're going to see pretty big advancements. And what we're seeing most companies do right now, which is pretty responsible, is they're taking those people and saying, listen, we don't need you to do that task anymore, but we could use you over here. We already have your salary built in. Like we're not going to fire you to like just save a little bit of money. We know we have other needs in the organization. And so instead of a career ladder, you're going to have a career lattice and you're going to move around and all of this, right? But what's going to happen within the next 5 years is that if there's no one in the front lines at the very beginning of that work at your office, learning how to do the business, who in the heck do you promote and move into the next things? As you lose people now, or as people retire, or as your organization grows, we have no one coming in at the entry level because we've given that work to AI. And so, who do you mentor? Who do you train? Who do you have as interns? Who do you like? Do you pull someone off the line at Chipotle and suddenly they're the manager of customer service? Like, what's the in between there? And so, organizations are going to have to figure this out. Now, big organizations are going to have this problem first, and then it's going to trickle down because obviously, if you have 10 people in your office, that's not quite a realistic scenario for you. But if you have thousands of employees, it's going to be an issue. We've seen Shopify, we've seen Duolingo really have stops and starts with their AI first policies and how they're trying to implement some of these things. And so there's going to be a lot of disruption and a lot of, I'm sure you remember like when we got cell phones, not just cell phones, smartphones. When smartphones entered the business world, it took us 5 years to get to 800 million users. It took us 17 months to get to 800 million users just on ChatGPT. Remember how much disruption there was about having your smartphone at work. There was security issues. There was like constantly like being able to use the tool correctly and like, can I have my work email on my phone? Like it was a problem that we talked about at conferences for 5 years until
Yeah.
we finally got it figured out. That's what the next 5 years is going to be, is like this constant headache of AI. And whether it's like how to use it, getting people to use it, what it's replacing, the security issues it's causing, um, as well as like people using it to go around you. I
Mhm.
mean, Gen Alpha knows how to use this pretty good, and they're probably going to figure out an app or the code they need to go around whatever little safety thing you've put in place and get around and get their job done because they don't want to put up with not being given the authority to get their things done. Like we're going to see some really crazy examples. So I think overall it's good. Overall, the future is bright and great, but like we're going to see this 5 years is going to be icky a little bit with trying to figure all this out.
It's a real interesting perspective because you think of, again, we go back to leadership development or mentoring or whatever you want to identify it as. If people come into the organization at a higher level without that experience, I would assume that there's going to be more mistakes made. I would assume that they're going to have some big failures. They're going to do things that they think that are right and they find out are not right. So there's going to have to be maybe a bigger tolerance for people coming in and being sloppy for a while.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's really, really interesting. Do you think that flexibility is the new currency, going forward and in the workforce? Is that what is going to attract the best and the greatest is flexibility?
It depends on the industry. So, what's interesting is that COVID finally democratized flexible work for us. Salespeople, leaders, managers, directors, they always had hybrid work. Um, your repair people, your quote unquote blue collar workers who come into your house, like they have already had remote work. So this is not a new concept, but there was this group of people in offices that were chained to their desk because people we're using the old Industrial Revolution version of management, which is if I can see you, I can manage you. And if I see you, you must be doing a good job. If you're running around the office looking like you're busy, and if you're in meetings, well, then you must be trying. And what we learned is, of course, that's a very terrible metric, terrible way to manage people. So I think anyone who can take advantage of flexible work will have an advantage. So we can hire better people, different people. We can hire for better, faster, cheaper if we allow people to work in different places, or if they only have to come into the office a few days a week, or maybe for certain times. Like the more flexibility we can give people, the better. And we're going to get, so we had great examples of how we leveraged that to get incredible talent that we could just run over our competitors with, because we allowed people to, like, they only could work 30 hours. We didn't require them to work 40, right? And we would still give them benefits and stuff. Like we just figured out how to make it work for different groups of people by offering flexibility and different ways to work and amounts to work and all of that. So we could meet our goals, instead of just giving more money to people to come in and fit into our tiny little, like, you must fit this cookie cutter model of an employee. Now, there are companies, there are industries, there are situations where maybe flexible work isn't going to be very doable. Maybe it is a little bit. Maybe it's like we can sometimes on Fridays or 2 days a week it works, but the norm is to be in the office, and that we've seen that sometimes that is needed.
Mhm.
But if you can do flexible work, people do need time together in person. So how do you make that happen? My company, it was once a year. And for most employees, that's all they needed. My salespeople, it was 4 times a year. My customer service team was twice a year. So we had different groups where, like, they did need a little bit of in-person time. We figured that out. But that was way cheaper and way better than having them all in one giant place all the time. Um, so is it the currency? It could be. I think it's an advantage, but um, it's going to just depend on the industry and what you're doing.
I think it also depends on the person too, having choices. I mean, there's some people that love working at home and can be very productive and maybe have a setup that works really well for them. And there's others that just can't. They like coming into an office, they like that environment, they're more productive. So the ability to have them pick and choose a little bit as to what works best for them, and you as their leader help them decide maybe what's the best for them. I think it could be different in the same company with two different people.
It is, but we used to have these conversations with people that told us, I don't know, I just like going into an office. I really like that. And so what we figured out was is they didn't know how to turn on and turn off. They needed that mechanism of, I get in the car and I drive to work, that means it's work time. And then I get in the car and I leave work, and that means work is done.
Mhm.
And then, they also were using work as their social outlet. It was the place in which they got their social energy. They talked to people, they had friends, they would go have lunch with people. And what we found is if we just gave them some suggestions on how to recreate some of that in their own life but working at home, they would shift. 99% of the time they would tell us, actually, I do like this better now. But they didn't have the tools or the framework to understand, like, you need to have a dedicated office space. That door needs to be shut when you're not working. And so in the morning, you open that door and you open your laptop and you do your work. And when you're done, we need you to close your laptop physically. And we need you to close that door physically. Again, those were the little mental things they needed of work is on, work is off. We need you to go and find another social outlet in your life. Go join a club, go join a thing, go find friends somewhere else. You're going to have friends at work, but virtually. But if you need that, like, I need to be near other people, like physically, which most of us do, that's cool. Go, it needs to be done somewhere else. And so when we coached people on that, it was amazing to see them shift their whole perspective on whether they need to be in the office. You know, we've seen that programmers do really well. People who are inventing things, whether physically, like, putting the things together and they're trying something, like, you need to be with your team and the people you're inventing with, or you need to be co-coding. And, like, there are situations when being together is going to be better. But for the vast majority of people, it's not.
As a culture guy, do you find it harder to build those good, strong, interactive cultures when people are remotely working versus in the office? Or do you think it's just a different way? How do you look at that for, as you said, you're the culture guy. So what's the best formula and how you just explained that you coach them how to do it remotely. But what do you think as far as culture goes? Is it harder to get those great cultures now that people are working more remotely and less interaction face to face?
So if you are, let's just say you have everyone, you have 100 people in one office and you're managing them, and now you're going to go remote, but you're not going to do anything different. You're just going to send them all home and keep managing them the way you were managing them. That will be harder. You will not have the same culture. It will feel difficult and weird and whatever because we know we have to do different things. We have to manage people and show up in different ways when they're remote. Because if let's just say that, you are my boss, Steve, and I always come into work on time, and then like for the next 5 days in a row, I've been late and I look flustered when I come in and I don't look like I'm right. You can observe that, right? And you come over to me and you're like, "Hey, Chris, what's going on?" And I'm like, "I'm fighting with my spouse. I think we're gonna get a divorce." Like, okay. You picked up on a change in behavior. You picked up on something was going on and you stepped in to help or at least offer your support. If we're 100% remote and your interactions with me are, boom, the Zoom comes on, the Teams comes on, and I suddenly like smile and pretend like everything's okay, but my work productivity is not, but you don't know, you don't haven't had that interaction with me to know that something's going on because we're not all in the same office. So we have to recreate that. We have to create new places and ways for us to bump in, check in, and all that. And if we do that, there's another like 50 things I could add to the list, but if we change, we have to make sure that we are finding ways to recreate some of the things or to at least have those opportunities with those people in different ways. Then what we find is the culture is actually better than it was when you were all in one place because people have deep time to work and to think, and they can step away from their office and have a cup of coffee and pet the dog for 5 minutes and actually be bored and go, "Oh, I have an idea how to fix that client's problem," because they're not being inundated with noise and questions and just chaos all being in the same office all day. I saw that people came up with far better ideas because they could sit quietly for a few minutes and just think. And so we know remote could be better. Now, hybrid is the most difficult. Even if you're doing the best possible thing, even if you're like the best culture person in the world, hybrid is the most difficult to do out of all three. So it's not remote that I worry about, it's actually hybrid.
Interesting. And just expand on that a little bit. Why is hybrid so much difficult or more
Yeah.
difficult?
So is it hybrid because some people always come into the office and some people are always remote? Is it hybrid because we come in 3 days a week, but are we all there on the same 3 days or is it different days? You get to pick your 3 days. Like, what kind of hybrid are you? And are you in these situations where some people are having side conversations and understand what's happening because they are there together, and other people are not there and then they don't have the context of what's happening because we had a meeting, but like you and I showed up in the conference room and we talked 5 minutes before the meeting, and you and I are a lot farther along. We flip on the Zoom call, the remote people come in or have this call, but like they're all behind because you and I have been talking. And then we shut that off, and then you and I keep talking about it, and now we're in a totally different place than them.
Hmm.
The way to fix that is that we all show up as if we're remote. So we don't have those side conversations. If we're going to talk about something, we all open up our laptops or we show up to that meeting with the strict rules that, hey, if you're going to whatever you're going to talk about, it needs to be with everybody. Again, that's that team charter idea. We don't have side conversations with people. We keep all our conversations in the meeting, in the channel in Slack, whatever it is, to make sure we're being transparent. Everyone knows what's happening all the time. That's that shift. That's hard to do. That's hard
Yeah.
to keep that going. But we
Yeah.
ultimately have people who feel like they're in the know and people who feel like they're never in the know. and it's always changing based on where you are and all of that. So that can be really, really hard to manage, especially for a young leader who maybe didn't have the basis of like someone always in the office or someone always remote to kind of pull from.
I hear what you're saying, and that makes sense. But part of me also feels like, oh, well, wait a minute. Are you suggesting that those little sidebars and those little things where people get together aren't good? Because part of me feels like that's where the magic happens sometimes, where you're just sitting around shooting the ball, and then, oh, hey, wait a minute. I didn't think of it that way. Maybe we could do it this way and whatever. So it's an interesting concept. Theoretically, it makes sense. Yeah, I'm just really interested in what you just said.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it's just like reminding people of it's totally cool to do that, but let's not leave everybody else out.
Yeah.
So how do we not leave them out? Invite them to that conversation, move that conversation to a Slack channel or Teams channel. Or if you absolutely cannot help it, and you and I are going to have this magical conversation about it, then how do we go and share what we just talked about back with everybody? How do we make sure that they stay in the loop, right? That we shrink the loop for them.
I agree because I think there's nothing worse than when you feel like you're part of a team, but you're not in the know. So
Yep.
that can be destructive for sure. Now, this is probably a really big thing to ask, but maybe if you could just summarize a little bit. You talk about your seven pillar strategy. So I know you wrote a whole book on them. So, just could you just summarize a little bit about what those seven pillars are and what we need to focus on?
Sure. So, in my research and in the study that I did, and we had Walden University come in and do a big research study to validate everything that we had come up with, and then I've done this with hundreds of companies, and no matter what the circumstances, we've never like said, oh, it should have been eight, or nope, it should have been six. Like these seven have held true consistently. Um, and so these seven pillars are transparency, listening, recognition, measurement, how we deal with mistakes, and let's see, what I've forgotten.
Difficult conversations? How to deal
No,
with difficult conversations?
um, it's so funny that I'm blanking on my own pillars. Um,
Sorry, I put you on the spot.
No, I think I just haven't had coffee this morning. That's so funny. So wait, transparency, listening, recognition, measurement, how we deal with mistakes. Did I say recognition already? I did.
Good.
Uniqueness.
Yeah.
Uniqueness is the other one. So, um, you know, everyone is going to interpret these differently. But like, are we being transparent with everything that we can tell people? Are we showing up and like not an organization that shows up and doesn't hide information but is sharing information allows people to fill in the gaps with the correct story, not the oh my gosh, the last time this happened, my boss fired me story,
Hmm.
to create that safety. I found it absolutely fascinating that when I showed up and told people, um, like, hey, we haven't had a very good 2 months. Like our sales are down. We lost a big client. But we would tell them what happened, why it happened, and what we were going to do about it. They were like, okay, boss. Like no one freaked out,
Yeah.
right? But back in the day when we didn't share that stuff, you could see people freaking out. They knew something was going on. They knew the organization was stressed, and then they were filling in it with their own stories.
Hmm.
Thinking about what makes us unique as individuals, but also like in our marketing, in our messaging, how we talk to each other, being curious about what makes each person unique, each client unique, helps us create stories and find those innovations that are going to help us uh, uh, come up with better ways to make the business run. So as I kind of read through those, if you heard one that you felt like maybe was one that you need to work on, right? That's where you need to go start. If one of them made you cringe a little bit, um, that's the one you need to go work on. And it's probably my fault, but I just got the Italian version of my book, and so I looked down at my book and it's in Italian. And I think that's
Wow.
why I think that's why I blinked on the pillars because they're all in Italian in front of me.
There you go.
And I was looking at them and I was like, "Oh my gosh, it was so funny." So, yeah, transparency. Oh, positivity was the one I forgot. That was the one. Positive leadership.
Yeah.
So how do we get curious about what's working? How do we do more of what we do well? How do we think about why do people do well in this area and move that along the organization. So anyways, I'm blaming the Italians on this one. So
Well, that works. That works. So, Chris, in anticipation of our discussion today, we've covered quite a bit of ground, but what haven't I asked you that you want to be sure and get in the program today?
well, that's a good question. Probably, one thing that would be really interesting for people to think about is like the question would be is, how do I go back and connect with my people today? So if I'm an average leader, I've got a group of people and I'm not maybe they're hybrid, maybe they're remote, maybe they're in the office, and I'm not feeling like I'm really connecting on an emotional level with them. And I feel like this is where most leaders are struggling. That things are okay, but they're not great. Like, how do I create that great? And I would challenge them to go back and do two things. So this feels like Jeopardy because I'm giving you that prompt first. But the first thing is, and don't tell anyone you're going to do this, but in some way, in your own way, I need you to start saying yes to every question that you get. You can say yes and yes but, and there's a ways around that, but don't tell anyone you're going to say yes to everything. But if people feel like you are saying yes to their idea and you're saying yes to listening to them and yes to like, let's talk about this, let's, we'll go through that, then they are excited every time they come up with a great idea to come in and share it with you because you're going to be the and one person. You're going to be the, yeah, let's figure out, let's talk about that. Like that's cool. Instead of I'm too busy, make an appointment. We'll talk about that on our one-on-one. Like people start to feel discouraged. And so they get into this rut of just, I'll just do my job. I'm here
Mhm.
for a paycheck. Nobody wants to hear what I have to say. They've made that very clear, right? And so as a leader, if we can really start to get people to feel more like we want to hear from them and we value them, and even if their ideas are stupid most of the time, or we already tried that, we know it can't be done, that's okay. But we want to get them in that mode, that training mode of thinking and innovating and being excited about new ideas, and so that we can continue them down that path, and they will get better and better at it. That's an interesting phenomenon we learned was that people actually got better as they practiced being innovative, practiced coming up with new ideas. And they were pretty terrible at it when we just came to them out of the blue and said, we need an idea. And they hadn't been in that mode, right, of ideation, of thinking about things and how do we come up with new ideas or new perspectives.
Makes sense. Makes
Yeah.
sense.
And then the second thing is to go back and do this exercise with your team. I like to do it daily. 3 times a week will work, but in at least a 30-minute meeting, maybe an hour meeting, show up at the beginning of the meeting. You only do this once per day, only with your team, people you work with and that have high psychological safety with. And you say, how are you showing up? The wording is very important. How are you showing up? They'll all go around the room and they're going to tell you how they're showing up. And over time, their answers are going to get a little deeper and a little more personal, a little more, they're going to share a bit more. Don't expect them to share their deepest, darkest secrets on day one, okay?
Yeah.
Um, and when they say something that's great, celebrate it. When they're giving you the same boring answer day after day after day, that might be an indication you need to go have a conversation with them and see if they feel safe sharing or what's going on with them. But most importantly, when they say to you, I'm struggling, some version of I'm not okay, how do you show up as their boss right then and there to do something about it? I'm feeling overwhelmed. Okay, great. How do we help you? How can we help you? If you're feeling overwhelmed right now, what do you need? What can the team do to help you? What can I do as your boss to help you? We just found out my grandmother passed away. I gotta go be on a plane tomorrow to Kentucky, the funeral. Why are you at work? Like, please take the rest of the day off. The team's gonna cover you. Go figure out, get with your family, keep us posted. Like, how do you show up for them in that moment? Because that's what people remember. We make the most of the moments that matter. That's what people remember,
Yeah. Great advice.
right?
Yeah, Chris, at this point in the interview, I always ask my guests the same common question. And that question is, in relation to leadership, what is a pearl of wisdom that you could leave us with today?
What you focus on grows.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Well, Chris, this has been a real pleasure. As one culture guy to another culture guy, I enjoyed this conversation very much, and I do believe culture trumps everything. So we just got to continue to find ways to build that culture that everybody can, can do well in and be excited about and be engaged in and so on. So appreciate the work you're doing. Sounds like you're doing some fun things with your keynotes and always got new ideas and start new companies. So sounds like you're still going strong.
Yep. Still going. Thank you, sir, for having me.
Well, have a good rest of your day and look forward to hearing more of what you're doing in the future.
Awesome. Thank you.
Bye bye.